Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. For the next 30 to 40 minutes, we'll be covering the topic, what we can learn from curling when creating secure behaviors. I'm sure there are some behaviors in your organization that you would like to encourage or to discourage, some risky behaviors that you would prefer people to stop, and some security behaviors that you would like them to start or take more often. But of all things, what has curling to do with this? Before we get into that, let's go through some housekeeping items. So this webinar is being recorded. The recording and the slide deck will be shared with you later today. Please use the Q&A feature to post questions for Sarah and me today. We might answer your questions directly in the chat or save them for the live Q&A at the end of the webinar. And if you still have any questions after the webinar, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or to the folks at hoxhunt.com. All right, now that we've covered some housekeeping items, let's move on to introductions. And it's a pleasure for me to welcome Sarah today. Sarah is a skilled CISO and security awareness specialist with many years of experience within governance, risk, and compliance, and a background in program management and behavioral design. She's currently working at Tivoli in Copenhagen. Tivoli is the world's second oldest amusement park, for those who don't know about it, and I strongly recommend to go there. And I've met with Sarah several times over the past few months, and I've been amazed at her passion for integrating the human element into the CISO's work. So thanks for being here, Sarah.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. And my name is Maxime. I'm also passionate about the intersection between people and security. I've built security awareness, behavior, and culture change programs for large global companies in manufacturing, aerospace, and at the retail company H&M Group. Today, I'm the head of human risk for Hoxhunt, and I'm charged with developing and executing a strategy that enriches Hoxhunt and its clients towards effective human risk management. For today, we have a quite straightforward agenda. I will shortly set the stage for Sarah by detailing what I think is one of the biggest challenges that we are currently facing in cybersecurity. And then Sarah will tell us finally how curling is related to this challenge. And we'll conclude with the discussion and the Q&A. So is everyone ready? Let's get started. According to the Verizon Data Breach Investigation report, last year, 74% of all cybersecurity breaches involved the human element. And this includes breaches caused by social engineering, such as phishing attacks, breaches linked to weak or stolen credentials, or accidental mistakes, for example. This means that 74% of breaches are directly caused or prevented by people's actions. And while advanced technology provides effective tools to mitigate the risk of cybersecurity breaches, it's crucial to recognize that addressing the human element is equally essential. The 74% shows that importance of considering human behavior in our approach. So since it's a huge part, if not all, of the cybersecurity risk that stems from behaviors, what's the best way to reduce risk? There's only one logical answer to that. We need to reduce risky behaviors or increase positive, secure ones. And each one of us in security has tried this before. I'm sure we've all wanted our colleagues to stop taking a certain risky behavior, such as using the same password for different accounts, or we wanted them to start doing something else or do it more often, like reporting phishing emails or updating their devices. But it's quite hard to do that, right? Here's the reason why. And I like to credit the inspiration for this story to an ex-coworker of mine, Monica Coulberry, who's a psychologist by trade who now works in cybersecurity. Let's imagine we're part of a governmental agency here. So the Health and Nutrition Agency, let's call it. And we see that the frequency of metabolic diseases such as diabetes is increasing. And we want to motivate people to eat healthier, more vegetables to counter that. In particular, we see that there's a lot of research that shows how greens like broccoli are beneficial to us, but that they're not consumed by everyone. So we go for a workshop together and we ask ourselves, it seems that people are not eating broccoli. How can we motivate them to eat more? And I can assure you that the very first idea that will get thrown into that workshop is, oh, we should do an information campaign about this. Let's share how healthy broccoli is. Let's put it on the TV, in posters in the subways, in the radio, in the newspapers. Because we typically think that if we give enough information to people, they will see the good in this information and they will create a behavior. but we all know that broccoli is healthy, right? And the truth is, even though we all know that it's healthy, I've never seen a nationwide epidemic of broccoli anywhere. So this is what a Stanford researcher named B.J. Fogg calls the information action fallacy. Information alone is unlikely to create a behavior, so this link is broken. Even if you do something once, like eating a broccoli on the 2nd of January as your New Year's resolution, it might not become a habit. All of us have these experiences of resolutions where we start something, but we just don't keep up. That's because motivation quite naturally fluctuates over time. So the second link on the slide is broken too. So, Sarah, what's the best course of action if we want to reduce risk and change behaviors then?
Well, apparently we have to look at curling. And some of you are probably thinking, what does curling have to do with the secure behaviors? And I'm getting at that. But first of all, we need to introduce curling to those of you who are not from the cold north and know about the sports. Curling is like a team sport that's played on ice. It's about sliding stones of granite onto ice where there's a target painted on the ice. And this team, they have one person who's sliding the stone, releasing it on its path, and then there has two people who have brooms and are swiping the ice so the stone will move in the right direction. And this sweeping, it decreases the friction, and it makes the stone travel on a straight path and at a longer distance. So to achieve this desired goal, they have to swipe the right path so the stone will move towards the target, but they have to stop at the right time as well, so it will slow down and stop on its path towards the target. So this is about removing friction from the desired path. We have to think about what behavior do we want, and what frictions are there. I have in the slide an example of an extremely risky behavior. I think we can all see that. This guy, he's really doing something that's risky. And when we've defined these risky behaviors, we need to look at the risk scenarios. What are there? What risky behaviors are there? And then define those risky behaviors and say, okay, we want to work with this exact behavior. And then we need to look at the future behavior. So you can see this woman, she has a secure behavior. And when we're working with behaviors, we need to find out what is it that's preventing this first guy in having the secure behavior. An example of doing this and transferring this to IT security could be like a risky behavior could be to send confidential files in an email as an attachment. That's a risky behavior because, it adds up to data leakage. And 80% of data leakages happens because people send the wrong things to the wrong person. And then the secure behavior would be to enclose a link in the email instead, where you're able to remove the access to the file when it's no longer needed, and encrypt the mail. So that's an example of the desired behavior that we actually want. So when we've been through this evaluation, we have this $100 question that if you only take one thing with you from this whole webinar, is this $100 question: why aren't they having the secure behavior today? I think too few of us working with risk mitigation ask this question on a daily basis, because we need to look into the causes for why we have the risky behavior. Because until we know the causes, when we aren't able to design the solution that will help us achieve the secure behavior. How can you design a solution or sweep the path towards a desired behavior if you don't know what to take away? So before we go into the friction analysis, we need to understand the human brain. When we're looking at frictions, we need to understand how our brain is kind of like composed. Our brains have developed to be in a totally different environment, understanding different risks. So everything has been about, surviving physical risks, surviving danger, real danger, those eyes in the dark, and about saving energy in able to survive. And looking at this whole energy thing, a lot of the things that have shaped our brain has been about saving energy. because energy is a key to survival when you're a hunter-gatherer. So our brains has developed what I call the little apps, but that are the human biases and heuristics that are kind of like shortcuts that help us save that energy. 25% of the total energy consumption in a day is done by the brain. So using our brain is very energy consuming, and the brain has invented ways to save that energy in order to survive. And this is actually what we struggle with today when we're looking at behavioral change. Because throughout evolution, we've wanted to save energy, but looking at the complexity in the whole digitalization in the world today, this is something that the brain really doesn't want because it wants to save energy. So we need to analyze the frictions because we have a bias called a path of least resistance. We tend to do what is causing least friction and that is causing least energy consumption. So what I do is what I call a friction analysis or behavioral analysis. I'm looking into 5 different groups of frictions that are used to analyze what is preventing my users from adopting these secure behaviors. First of all, we have the process. Is there a lot of complexity in the process? Because then you can bet that people will do something else. If it's very complex, this is where you start. Then it's like, does the behavior take a long time? Because most of us, we go to work every day to try to do our daily jobs. And we are the lucky ones going to do security every day. But most people, they're not at work to do secure behaviors. They're at work to do their work. And then we ask them to do something else that they have to kind of like squeeze in. So if the process takes very long and if it's very cumbersome, that could be a friction. So the next thing in my list that I look at is the organization. Is it clear who's responsible for having this behavior? You know, if it's a common responsibility, no one's responsible. Is this behavior perceived as being relevant for only a group in the organization, or is it relevant for everyone? Because if it's relevant for everyone, no one does anything. And then is there a pull for the behavior to be done? Or does the individual user have to kind of like push through a lot of resistance in the organization to get it done? It's also really relevant because when you have to design a solution, it's relevant to know if it's a smooth path already or if it's really full of frictions that you have to remove. Then is there a resistance in the team on doing this? Sometimes there's a resistance because of old habits within the organization. Then the next thing on my list that I'm looking at is culture. And culture is this thing that's hard to grab, but we need to look at the culture. Is there support for doing this? Do people support the individuals who has to have this behavior? How are they talking about this behavior or this action? Is that like a negative tone or is it at a positive, enlightened tone? So how are they talking about this? How is this talked about within the organization? And what's the norm? Is this behavior something new that's out of normal? Because if it's new, it's pretty hard to get that in. But if you have something that's a norm that you can kind of build on, that you would want to do that. And then I'm looking at the social attitude towards the behavior. And also another thing, the social attitude towards the requester. So if you're the IT security department saying, no, 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 then people are less likely to do what you ask them for. But if the IT security department is like, oh, let me help you, let's see, oh, you happen to click there, let's work it out, then they're much more likely to call you if they click something or if you ask something. So that's back to a bias called reciprocity that I work a lot with. And then we have the equipment. Is there a specific hardware that you need to use? Is there an IT system that is needed to have this behavior? Is there technical skills required to use these IT systems? Is the system easy to use or is it very, very difficult? Because studies shown that if we are seeing something that is complex, like a complex text, then we actually believe that the behavior that it describes is also complex. It's the same with the system. If the system is full of little buttons, then we believe they're harder to use than if it's a very clean user interface. So that is something that can cause frictions. The next thing, and the last thing, I promise you, is the target group. What's the attitude within this group on the behavior that you want them to have? Are they very, very negative or are they supportive? Are they just confused? So what is the attitude towards your behavior? And then does it require a specific knowledge? to adapt this behavior? Is this a lack of motivation? Because if the target group lacks motivation of doing this, then we need to work with the whole motivational factors. But if it's a lack of ability, they don't have the equipment, they don't have the skill set, then it's something else that we need to work with. So doing that analysis of the frictions will help us analyze the root cause and build and design solutions for the right behavior. So the last thing that I always ask when I'm working with a target group is about the lack of prioritization. Because if the target group is not prioritizing it, well, it's not being done. And then you have to look backwards and saying, why aren't they prioritizing it? And then I recommend using the 5 whys technique, go back, why. So you have the root cause for why they're not prioritizing this. But it could be things like it's not a part of their goals. If you're in a very goal-oriented organization and it's not a part of my goals, I'm not going to do it. It could also be because I'm really, really busy keeping the organization alive. So looking into that will help you know how to build a design solution that will help you. So now we've been through processes, organization, culture, equipment, and we've had a good overview of the frictions preventing the target group from adapting this secure behavior. And now we are ready for building and designing the solution. I think it was Maslow who said that if all you have is a hammer, then all problems look like a nail. I believe, and it's just from my own thing, that we have historically tried to solve many IT security risks that are human risks with technical solutions. And that can be okay. That can be totally fine when your friction analysis shows that they need a technical tool. It's the best way to fix it. So we need to define the frictions in order to design the right solutions. And, I work with the nudging and stuff like that in order to achieve this behavior. So don't add tech if it's not needed. That's kind of like the takeaway from this. And then I have an example for you on how to do this, because it's something that I've done a few times. So we have a situation that most of us know about phishing. When we look at phishing, we all know that clicking a link in a suspicious email is a risky behavior. What we want to do instead can be, it can be different things, but I prefer my users to report the email because then it can enhance my filters, and then I'm able to do the auto purge. And in case someone else has this email in their mail system, then I can remove it automatically. So I want my users to report the emails that are suspicious. When I look at the frictions, it varies in different organizations, but it could be, lack of a solution. They don't have in the mailing system a button to press to report the email. That's a friction. It's too cumbersome because they have to press the button and then they have to choose between, is it spam, is it unwanted, is it, all these things. And every click is a friction. It could also be that they don't know they're supposed to. Then we need to work with information. And it could be they don't know how, because in your organization, they have to, copy the email and attach it and send it. Maybe they don't know they're supposed to do it. So you need to work with your processes. It comes back to people and processes and technology with this. So what I've done a few times is I have, if it wasn't already there, added this feature of being able to press a fish button, as I call it, to report the email really fast and easy. And then I've done little campaigns when I've sent them an email saying, you're specially chosen. We all like to be specially chosen. You're specially chosen to be a part of a phishing competition. So within a week, you're going to receive a phishing email, and you have to report it using your brand new, with an arrow up to the new button, brand new fish button, and you will get a ball in the lottery and might win a prize. You can recognize a phishing email by these 5 bullets here. And then I have, the regular 5 bullets. And doing the campaign this way, people think sometimes that I'm crazy because I warn the users, but thinking from a learning perspective, because they are warned that this email will come, the learnings within the email are more relevant to them. So it will store in a different part of the brain because they're going to use it just in maybe in a few hours, maybe in a few days, but they're going to use it. And they are really keen on getting that ball in that lottery. So doing campaigns this way engages users, it removes friction, it works on the training, and it works on on the ability. When the competition runs, if they click the button, then they get the feedback that, yay, good thing, you reported the email. And if they accidentally click the link, then they get, the exact same mail, but then it's highlighted. Oh, we wouldn't send you an email from Extreme Dinners. Oh, the board of directors would not tell you about your salary. There's an urgency to it, so it's all about emotions. There are spelling mistakes, so you could have noticed that. So the user gets some learning instantly. So it's the feedback bias that we work with, that people tend to like to get the feedback. So doing phishing competitions like this, implementing the button has actually, I've done this a few times in different organizations, and within 6 months to a year, I have a reporting rate on 63, 67 percentage. That actually is a behavior change that you can measure and say, okay, before we had none, now they actually reported 67% of the time. So that all comes back to the friction analysis. If I hadn't sat down and analyzed what is preventing them from doing it today, I wouldn't have able to to design a solution and the campaign and the whole thing, getting me the secure behavior that I wanted. So we need to get that stone moving. We need to get that behavior implemented. First, we need to define the desired path. Then we need to remove the friction so we get that stone moving, and add frictions actually to the things that we don't want users to do, because that's another way of the friction analysis, that we can add little frictions, make it really difficult, the things that we don't want the users to do. So we need to get that stone moving and to define our path towards the secure behavior. So that's basically how I use friction analysis and when I'm working with the secure behaviors.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Your presentation made it clear that to get the stone moving, we need to understand why people take risky behaviors and remove frictions to promote the secure behaviors. I also love the animals in the presentation, and your results with the phishing part, I think, are quite impressive to get above 60% report rate. So
yes, it worked.
that worked really well. Thanks for sharing this example with us.
You're
I have
welcome.
a couple of questions for you, perhaps, before we move to the Q&A. In your opinion, who's responsible in the organization for this process of identifying the risky and secure behaviors and working on friction in the organization?
I think it depends on the organization. Because, is it a tiny organization with the one-man band, or is it a huge organization? But I really firmly believe that we need to keep it in our risk register, and we need to put it into our risk evaluation process, in my opinion. You can't really do a risk assessment and say you have done a full risk assessment without looking at the behavior. So that's one thing. But then if you're lucky enough to have a security awareness manager, they can kind of like, when you have the whole friction analysis and you say, these are technical things, these are informational things, these are training, then the security awareness manager will be able to pull that out of the risk matrix, and then you're able to prioritize your awareness initiatives. But what I like to do when I'm working with big organizations is to do these analysis in a workshop. So actually, I like to involve the security incident managers, because they know the incidents that you already have. And then I often invite IT support. Actually, I love IT support because they know how the users are behaving, and they know the frictions, and they are able to help you evaluate the skill set level and everything. So I typically do like a workshop, and if I'm lucky enough, I have internal communications people, and then they can help me on the communication side. If I'm really lucky, they have like organization change management people who can help me, with the whole culture thing. But it depends on the organization.
No, I love that. I love that you mentioned starting from the risk anyway, having it part of the overall risk register. And I think it's both so that, integrating human risk as a part of the broader risk is not something on its own, but it's also the remediation that can be actually given to different teams or different people. Because if the remediation is that people need training and awareness, well, of course, the responsibility obviously is with the security awareness and training person or team. But if the friction that we see is that it's a super cumbersome process and we need to review the process, that could still be driven by the security awareness team, but perhaps it's someone completely different that needs to be involved.
I fully agree. And we really need to look at this. And also, if the friction shows that they need a new system, then you would just add that into your whole security program as like project delivery. And then you would do the implementation in that project rather than doing the awareness. So that's kind of like an overlap on that.
Yeah, that's great. And I think maybe you already answered this with your previous answer, but just to conclude, how can someone listening today who's either a security awareness manager or a CISO, for example, start this process? What's the first thing they should do?
Well, if they only do one thing, they need to ask the $100 question: why aren't the users behaving securely today? Adapt these 5 groups of questions and begin questioning, why aren't people having the secure behavior today? And I have, a list of questions in all these groups on my homepage, and people can use them because I think it makes so much sense to get the full picture of the frictions causing behavior. So I think that there's a link somewhere in this presentation.
Thank you again, Sarah. And we will make sure to share the link in the chat also of this meeting so that you can access the website directly. Thank you so much, Sarah, for today. Really enjoyed this, and it's been a pleasure to do this presentation with you today.
I was really happy joining you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks. And with that, I want to open our presentation to questions. If you have to leave, thank you so much for your time today. And remember to tune into the upcoming webinar sessions for this Human Element series every Wednesday in April.